Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast this afternoon. And I want to welcome Adam Peters from Florida. And he's a strategic veteran. He empowers veterans through entrepreneurship and purpose. Brings a wealth of experience and a unique perspective. And I'm really happy to have him on to talk about his expertise and journey and contribute to the conversation for the audience. So, Adam, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it, man.
Start off by introducing yourself and we'll dive right into the questions.
Yeah, my name's Adam Peters. I was originally born and raised in Poseyville, Indiana, and I joined the Army right out of high school. Did almost 13 years before I was medically retired and started building the personal brand that is the Strategic Veteran.
Yeah, interesting. When you say building the personal brand, let's elaborate on that. You were just becoming a consultant or coach, or talk more about that.
Yeah, pretty early on in building this, I always knew that when I got out of the Army, I wanted to still lead soldiers. So trying to figure out a way to do that, discovered that entrepreneurship is not an avenue that is talked about to transitioning veterans at all. It's not something that's presented to them. It's not something that's really on their radar. There are outliers within the service that do build a side hustle or whatever, but by and large, the transition process out of the military is a terrible process, and they don't prepare you for really anything. They throw a bunch of resources at you. It's not very personalized. They don't tell you how to use those resources, and they don't really educate you on what your options are. I started the Strategic Veteran on LinkedIn, of all places. Is just one of my followers told me I should call the brand that, and I came up with the idea that the path back to purpose for veterans is through entrepreneurship, through building and scaling something that is their own, that is a never-ending mission that they will always have control over. So that's where we're headed with that.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's very similar. I created my brand to help physicians transition out of their medical or corporate career, and because there's not a lot of resources either, and the audience would benefit from leaders such as yourself. What is the one thing is talking about is transitioning out of the military. What is the key things that individuals struggle with it? Is it finding a sense of purpose? Is it financial literacy or freedom or getting a job? Or talk about the main things that people struggle with.
Yeah, it's a combination of all of the above, but there's two main things that really hinder the transition process. And if you look at the military as a whole, largely we enter the military 17, 18, 19 years old. So you're still a child by all means. And in my case, from 17 to 30 years old. So my identity became wrapped up in Adam Peters, the infantryman. I didn't have a clue who I was beyond that when all of a sudden my career ends 8 years too early. And through the loss of identity and the loss of purpose that comes with that identity in the military, we're just lost when we get out. We don't really fit into the mold that is the corporate world because things are done so much differently on the military side, the mindsets, the attitudes, the way you talk to people, all of that. And then by and large, we all know here that there is a huge financial literacy problem in this country. And you add to that, like someone like me who spent 13 years of his life from a child to 30 years old, really with, deploying every other year, going to a war zone, not really knowing if you're going to come back. You add the lack of financial literacy onto now I have a spending problem because I don't know if I'm going to be here to use and enjoy the money that I am making. We don't set ourselves up and nobody teaches us how to do that. And I say nobody generally, I'm not trying to speak in generalities, but largely, I didn't have any mentors teach me about a TSP and what that could do for me. Nobody taught me about how different arms of insurance work to go protect your money and not have to pay as many taxes. And nobody taught me about compound interest. I had to learn all of that in my mid-30s on my own. And you add that to the loss of identity and the loss of purpose and how hard it is to actually get a job, because largely somebody like me who's an infantryman, my skills in my mind don't translate well to a resume for the corporate world. I can't I kick doors in and shoot people in the face on a resume. It just doesn't work. Right now, knowing what I know now, I have problem solving skills. I have adaptability skills. I have leadership skills, and I know how to convert those skills into corporate speak, if you will, to get a job. But then you look at some of these corporations and There's a lot of corporations out there that just want to hire veterans for some tax breaks or whatever benefits they get, but they don't want to work with veterans and understand the challenges that they're facing in their company, trying to learn new systems and learn how to function in the civilian world. And it's just a recipe for disaster, man.
Yeah, interesting. And really, like I said, it really same thing with doctors too, because they spend their whole lives doing this educational treadmill, and when they get their sense of identity and purpose wrapped up into it, and then basically the machine eats them up, chews them up, burns them out, and they're left with nothing. It's really sad. So I'm glad to have individuals such as you. So what are some of the mindsets that set you up if someone were going to go into the military 17, 18, and they're like, yeah, maybe retired, and like, how should they approach military service? Like, how should they plan and prepare? They always say a plan is always better.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot to unpack there, but there's a lot of things that you can do. The first thing is enter the military knowing that someday you will transition out. So from day one, you'll start preparing for your transition and what that's going to look like. The second thing that you can do, and I tell everybody this because I was an enlisted guy, I didn't go to college until after I got out of the Army. People ask for my advice these days, and I tell them, do a JRTC program, get your college paid for if you want to go into the military, become an officer. That allows you to do a couple of things, right? It's gonna teach you kind of what college life is like, so you don't just have the straight up military life, but also it's going to let you see more of the military than like somebody like myself who joined to travel largely. And I got stuck in 2D stations and just went to Iraq and Afghanistan a bunch. It's also going to set you up for that transition out, because on the officer side of things, one of the big pieces that's missing for enlisted guys is networking, building a network and understanding how powerful a network of people actually is. And you very much get that on the side of officers. They understand that, they do a lot of that. Also, as you get higher up in the officer side of things, it gets more political. So there has to be more networking. And so that's one of the first things you can do. The other thing that you can do is choose a job that's not infantry like I did. I know it's an important job. I'm proud of my service. I loved my job. I was really good at it, and I wouldn't change anything about it, but there are plenty of awesome jobs out there that can set you up to walk into a civilian job doing the exact same thing. Intel is a good example of that. Any kind of mechanics, right? Probably not law enforcement. They don't really like that, but you see where I'm going with that. There's a lot of career fields within the military that you can set yourself up for success down the road, right? Use it as a stepping stone, because the Army or whatever you choose to join is not going to pay you what you're worth in like a field, I don't know, like the Navy does nuke stuff, right? Like nuclear, anything. Well, you're going to make severely less money while you're in the military, but you can use that as an education piece, as an experience piece, and then take that into the civilian world and have a great career. And so all these things were not presented to me when I joined in 2003. It was like, we need bodies right now. Like, this is what you should do. I fell for the recruiting videos of people jumping out of helicopters and shooting guns, hook, line, and sinker, man. And I ended up an infantryman. Educate yourself. Have a plan, a long-term plan of what your path forward looks like, because, don't do it like I did. Don't get wrapped up in your whole identity from 17 to 30 is the Army.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah. Again, it parallels like when I was in med school, I was actually plotting my exit, because I saw, what the challenges of the healthcare system. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to put in my time here, get what I need out of it, and get GTFO.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make you a bad person to follow your own path. That's something else that I would say to people is, society is not in charge of your life. You don't have to follow society's mold for what they say think, or whatever that you should or shouldn't do. Like, it's very much your own life to live. Trust your gut. If you're not feeling that path that you're on, your intuition's telling you that you're on the wrong path. You should probably find a different one.
Yeah. Talk about finances? Because I know what's really awesome is like one of the really cool things about the military is like you get college. Some of my classmates were military. They got their entire med school paid off. So talk about using like the military as strategic for like your finances and your education and like and I assume, I'm not sure, but I assume you get a stipend or something and start, saving.
Yeah. So lots of benefits, right? We all know you join, you get some college money. The post 9/11 GI Bill is really great. It paid for flight school for me. I wish it would have paid for more. I've never actually heard of it paying for all of med school, but I've heard people, if they were able and had time to take advantage of tuition assistance while they were in, which is another added benefit, they got their bachelor's degree, it'll pay for like a master's. It may pay for parts of doctorate programs. You really have to do some digging to find out how all that stuff works and really start pulling on the right strings. But the GI Bill is a great program. I got a bachelor's degree and flight school out of it. I can't complain. There are some different like TSP, thrift savings plan, I think is what it's called, through the military. I don't know how that works because nobody advised me on that when I was a young soldier. I know it can be a beneficial program. And then I was medically retired. So my retirement check comes from the VA at 100%. And I have some other special related compensation from combat. For those of you listening that are military, that are interested in becoming an entrepreneur, structure your finances in a way based on what you have coming in. Eliminate different things. Like I don't own a car right now. My wife and I own one car. She's the only one that works out of the house. I work from home all day. So I don't need the distraction or the extra cost. Really think about the things that you need to sacrifice in order to get to where you're going. Because I promise you, if I can do it, you guys can do it too. I'm the kid that grew up in rural Indiana with no money, hand-me-down clothes, and made fun of and beat up because of the clothes that I wore on my back and the shoes on my feet, and always wanted more than, which didn't help me as an adult with my spending problems. But if I can get it under control, to sacrifice things that I want now, delay my gratification till later, you guys can too. And you really have nothing to complain about because I've got a check that comes in on the first of every single month. I know how much that's going to be. I know how much I can spend. I know how much is left over after my bills. That's my operating budget. It doesn't change. And I just work around that until more money comes in.
Yeah. The, and I really love that because there's a lot of benefits. When we talk about transitioning from military into more of an entrepreneur, more of a corporate role, do most of the people that come out of the military, do they find jobs or are they more suited for entrepreneurs? And talk about how you determine whether you want to work for the private sector or do go out on your own.
Yeah, I think this is the $1 million question, my friend, because like I said earlier, veterans aren't really taught about entrepreneur unless you have somebody in your family who's running their own business or you've been exposed to it. Like it's a mystery to a lot of people. So by and large, what happens is you go through the transition process. I think it's called a SFL TAP now. It used to be called an ACAP when I went through it. It's same program, different label, just not same whatever. It's not great. But their advice is really, here's how you write a resume, use your GI Bill, go to college, get a degree. If you don't have one, good luck finding a corporate job. They don't do any kind of exploration. They don't make any of us sit with ourselves to ask ourselves, what are our core values? What are our passions? What are we interested in? So by and large, what happens when they get out, they've had a family. They're used to a certain amount of money coming in every month. They take the first job that pays them the same amount of money, and then they spend the rest of their life in this corporate job burning out and miserable because they hate it, because they're afraid to take the chance on themselves. And I would argue that's worse than being broke because you pursued building something that's yours or trying to own a business. Or hell, man, I met a guy yesterday that he's on it's called the Heroes Initiative with his franchise, and they're giving away 100 franchises to veterans over the next 2 years, right? There's so much opportunity for people out here if you're just willing to open your mind and look for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I have so many questions. And so, because one of them is the military has its strengths. And so talk about some of the attributes of being in the military and how it can hinder you as an entrepreneur. And like when you're in the military and you're thinking, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur afterwards, what sort of mindset should you go in, given that you're going to get military training? And of course, there's also good things about it, but also keep your mind open to more possibilities.
I love this question. This is one of my favorite questions. They're two very distinct mindsets, right? So the military operates largely in a very fixed mindset, meaning one job for one branch with one overarching mission, which is to protect the country, right? That mission changes, it niches down, whatever that looks like, but it's very linear thinking, very fixed mindset. And you do that over the course of your entire career. So Those of you who are interested in the military know that up front. It's going to be a very fixed mindset type of thing. What it's required to be an entrepreneur is a growth mindset. You need perspectives from everywhere. You need to take that 90-degree focus and 360 degrees that as much as possible, so that you're getting a view from over here and a view from over here and a view from over here. And you can take all of those and put those together to shape your own view of what you're trying to build or where you're trying to go. You can't do that in the fixed mindset. However, what's great that comes out of the fixed mindset is all these high leverage skills, and they're high leverage skills that translate well to the business world: leadership, adaptability, problem solving. Those things are what are required to grind building a business every day. It's okay to be in that fixed mindset while you're doing that. I would encourage you to try and develop a growth mindset and really, like I said, prepare your entire career for what's after this, because this does end and this is not 100% of who you are. It's something that helps shape you and mold you and guide you, but don't hang on to it like it's all you have or are all that you are. And I think those are the two, hopefully that answers the question for you. Those are the two main pieces.
Yeah. Again, there's so many parallels because medicine is also a very fixed mindset, and you're just so accustomed to following this one trodden path, and you just have to like play the game. And the other kind of, so you created a community. And so what's interesting is I see that your journey, you created a lot of meaning and purpose afterwards. What are some of the skills or tools that helped you to create that meaning, to create and help the people transition out of the military, create a strong community? And so talk about how the types of tools and tactics that you use to create a sense of meaning.
Yeah. So for me, you have to understand my journey. I spent about 8.5 years after I retired in 2015. And from 2015 to 2023, I would largely spend all of that in this really dark place that I call the transition hole, right? Wrapped up in the identity of the military, the combat stuff I had to deal with, the childhood trauma, all that stuff plays a factor. And I was blessed enough to get picked up by an awesome nonprofit called Heroic Hearts, who sent me to Peru to do an ayahuasca journey for a week. I went on an ayahuasca retreat, and it changed my entire life. It was, I call it a cheat code, in that it showed me the top of the mountain and the path up the mountain, and then all I had to do was do the work. So very quickly after that experience is when the strategic veteran was born, and when I started really realizing that everybody on planet Earth can benefit from the things I learned in this experience. And I don't care if you want to be the best intrapreneur, the best entrepreneur, the best stay-at-home mom, the best stay-at-home dad, it doesn't matter. There's a set of tools that I now have that just really shaped my entire life after that experience. So a gratitude practice, an abundance mindset, mindfulness, meditation, physical exercise, yoga, paying attention to what I put into my body, understanding, and I don't mean this politically, but understanding that big pharma and big food have kept secrets from us for a very long time. And all of these things are free. Every last one of these tools I've just given you are free. They're all mindsets and practices. And so I started doing that work on myself, and I started seeing that when I worked on myself and I stopped running from the things that I was running from and compartmentalizing all of those things, and would actually let myself feel them and acknowledge those emotions and those feelings, that everything else in my life would start to fall into place where it was supposed to. And so very quickly I was like, I can teach this to other veterans, but they have to get out of their own way. They have to get out of their own way and open their mind and stop looking at these things that I'm talking about as, or hippie, if you will, and actually understand that there's a lot of science behind a lot of these things. And it's really cool science when you start really reading into it and latching onto it. And so that's what I created, the Stronghold, which is my paid community for veterans, who really the main focus in there is that shift from fixed to growth mindset. So we have daily prompts in there that even get me from time to time, with as much work as I've done on myself. They really make me sit down and think and spend that time with myself to answer this question. And that helps get them in the growth mindset. And then it's just a community of like-minded people who have been where we've all been together. We've experienced the transition, experienced the military as a whole, deployments, all of that. They can come and dump all of their, I call them transition woes, right, into a post and have a community of people lift them up instead of break them down and rip them to shreds and tell them to suck it up and drive on. Because the biggest tool I've latched onto is vulnerability. The
Mm.
more vulnerable I am and the more I share my story with people, the more it helps them, but selfishly, the more it actually helps me.
Mhm.
And so that's everything, man. That's how I came to terms with how I'm gonna help this community that is killing itself at an incredible rate.
Yeah. And what are some success stories around your community? Talk about it and how people can find you and reach out to you if they're listening to this, if they're interested in military, they know something is different. How can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the success stories, man. We have a guy in the community. He started a laser engraving business and he had no idea what he was doing. He just loved the process of creating things for people. And we did our first mastermind workshop with him last week where he just brought his questions. And man, it's cool. He signed 3 or 4 or $500 orders since then because he had a community of people behind him with knowledge that was willing to share it with him. He texted me after that meeting and said, "I'm so glad you took this leap and started this community." I was in tears with how generous everybody was after that meeting. I'm so excited for the future of this. So if you want to find anything out about what I've got going on, if you want to get in touch with me, thestrategicveteran.com is my website. It's got the links to all my socials, to the podcast that I do, to the community, to the nonprofit work that I'm doing, to everything is there. And if you don't want to go to the website, you can find me largely on LinkedIn, just Adam Peters. There's 2 little salute emojis next to my name. I still do and probably always will on that platform do all of my DMs and comments. So it's not a virtual assistant. It's not a chat bot. It is 100% me. So if you have questions, if you're listening to this, if you're interested in the military, I can answer questions about that. Please reach out to me. I do my best to respond as promptly as possible, but it gets hard sometimes. I promise you, I won't forget about you. I will reach out to you.
I really love that. And again, there's so many parallels. And for the audience listening, Adam for coming on and sharing his wisdom and knowledge and keep up the great work.
Yeah, brother. Thank you for having me, man. I'm always grateful to just help people. One last thing, like if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur, let go of money and start focusing on helping others, serving others, servant leadership,
Mm.
because that's the fastest path to revenue, I swear.
Yeah. 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 Like it, I love that. It is so true. It's like counterintuitive. It's you think you have to focus on the bottom line, but actually if you focus on value and service, then it just pours in. Thanks again. And thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it, man.